Thanks for tuning in. Let me know where you're watching from, so feel free to drop a comment below. I never thought my life would turn into the kind of mess you read about in gossip magazines. But there I was, standing in the middle of it, my life shattered into countless jagged pieces. My name is Ethan Matthews, 37 years old, married for 8 years to a woman I thought was my soulmate, Kayla. But soulmates don't sneak around behind your back, do they? It all began one night when I was cleaning up after dinner. Kayla had come up with yet another excuse about staying late at work, her 5th late night that month. Deadlines, she said, her voice flat, like she didn't even care if I believed her. I didn't buy it, but I stayed quiet, not wanting to act like the suspicious husband. It wasn't until I went to throw away some trash and noticed her phone lighting up on the counter that something felt off. The name flashing across the screen was unfamiliar. Brian? My curiosity got the best of me, and I tapped the message. I can't wait to see you tonight. Wish I could stay longer, it read. My heart sank, and I felt blood rushing in my ears. I scrolled further, my pulse pounding like a drum. The texts weren't just suggestive, they were graphic. They spoke of plans, detailed encounters, even photos. My brain froze, like a fuse had blown. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was Kayla, my wife, my partner, betraying me in the worst way possible. By the time Kayla got home that night, I was trembling. I couldn't decide if I wanted to explode with anger or collapse in tears. The worst part was her reaction when I confronted her. I saw it in her eyes. No guilt, no shame, just a cold, unbothered look. Why were you going through my phone, Ethan? She snapped, like I was the one in the wrong. Who the hell is Brian? I shouted, waving her phone in front of her. She sneered. You're so dramatic. He's just a friend. Friends don't text each other about staying longer in bed. I shot back, my voice shaking. God, you're so insecure, she spat, rolling her eyes. This is why I can't stand being around you. You suffocate me. Suffocate her? My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I didn't recognize this woman. This wasn't the Kayla I had married, the one who was kind and caring. This was someone else, someone who could lie without a blink and twist everything back onto me. I wanted to yell, to shake her until she understood what she'd done to me. But all I could do was stand there, staring at her, stunned. Then she dropped the bombshell. Maybe you should stop pretending we're happy, Ethan, she said, venom in her voice. Brian makes me feel alive. You haven't done that in years. Years? I had been working my tail off late into the night, trying to build a future for us. I thought we were in this together. I was wrong. She stormed upstairs, mumbling about how she didn't need to deal with this, while my chest felt like it would burst from the anger and betrayal. But that night was only the beginning of a nightmare I never expected. The next day, I knew I couldn't just take her word. I needed real answers. I started digging, looking for any clues she might have left behind. Bank statements, odd receipts, more messages she hadn't bothered deleting. Piece by piece, I uncovered an even darker picture. Kayla hadn't just been sneaking around. She brought him into our home. This wasn't just cheating. This was a war. By the next evening, I was done playing detective. I had enough evidence to fill a box and enough rage to blow the roof off the house. But what pushed me over the edge wasn't the texts or the receipts. It was seeing him. Kayla thought I'd be working late, so she didn't expect me to come home early. I pulled into the driveway and saw a black SUV I didn't recognize. I knew in my gut who it belonged to. I stepped quietly into the house, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I heard voices from the living room, hers, light and playful, his, deep and cocky. They were laughing. For a moment, I froze. Part of me wanted to turn around, pack a bag, and leave without a word. But the other part, the part full of hurt and rage, pushed me forward. I walked into the living room, and Kayla's face froze mid-laugh. She looked at me like I was a ghost. Brian didn't even flinch. He just smirked, smug as could be. Ethan, Kayla started, trying to sound innocent. What are you doing home? I could ask you the same thing, I said, eyes locked on Brian. He didn't move. This isn't what it looks like, Kayla said, scrambling for excuses. Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like, I said, voice shaking but feet planted. You brought him here into my house. Hey, man, maybe you should calm down, Brian said, leaning back, acting like he owned the place. By the next morning, Kayla's perfectly crafted life was unraveling faster than she could manage. She thought she had weathered the storm after I served her with divorce papers. Little did she know, I wasn't just ending our marriage. I was breaking her entire world apart, bit by bit. While she was out, likely sobbing to a friend pretending to sympathize, I was focused on my next move. This time, I aimed to expose her publicly. I didn't just want simple revenge. I wanted her to feel what I had felt: humiliation, betrayal, devastation. I started by uploading what I called the truth file to a private but accessible link. It was filled with cold, undeniable evidence. Screenshots of her messages with Brian, bank statements showing where the missing money had gone, and a detailed timeline of her lies, all laid out with receipts and dates. Then, I anonymously sent the link to everyone she cared about: her boss, coworkers, social club members, even her yoga instructor. Was it harsh? Sure. But this wasn't just about cheating. It was about revealing the real Kayla Monroe, the one behind the polished smile. By the afternoon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Friends called, some shocked and others saying they had their suspicions all along. But the most satisfying call came from Kayla herself. "You bastard!" she screamed as soon as I answered. "Do you realize what you've done? My boss just put me on unpaid leave because of your little stunt." "Oh, you mean the boss you lied to about why you kept taking sick days to meet Brian?" I replied, my voice dripping with fake concern. "Yeah, I'm sure he's really mad at me." "Ethan, I swear to God." "Swear to God what, Kayla?" I interrupted, raising my voice. "That you'll ruin my life?" Newsflash. You already tried, and now you get to live with the consequences. She hung up, but not before I heard her sobbing. Good. But I knew it wasn't over. There was still Brian. I wasn't content with him sitting in a jail cell for a few days. That was just the start. I did some digging and found out he had a girlfriend, Amanda, who had no idea what he'd been up to. Or so I thought. When I called her, I expected her to be shocked or angry. Instead, she laughed. "Oh, you think you're the first husband to call me about Brian?" Amanda said, her voice sharp. "That loser's been cheating on me for years. I only keep him around because he helps pay the rent." "Well, he's not paying anything from a jail cell," I said. "And I have a hammer to thank for that." She paused, then let out a dark chuckle. "Maybe I'll swing by and grab the rest of his junk while he's locked up. I've been meaning to throw him out anyway." It was almost too perfect. The man who thought he could steal everything from me now had nothing. But fate wasn't done with Kayla and Brian yet. That evening, I was at home, drink in hand, watching the chaos unfold on social media. Yes, the link had spread that far. Kayla showed up at the house, disheveled, mascara running, clutching a stack of papers like they were her lifeline. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking, "please let me talk." "Oh, now you want to talk?" I said, leaning against the doorframe. "After lying, cheating, stealing, and bringing that idiot into our home? You're lucky I'm not pressing charges for what he did." She held out the papers, her hands trembling. "I'll sign the divorce papers. All of them. You can have the house, the money, everything. Just please stop." "Stop what?" I asked, my voice cold. "Telling the truth? That's all I did, Kayla. I just showed everyone who you really are." Her lip quivered, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize. But, true to form, she turned it around on me. "You've ruined my life, Ethan." She spat, voice rising. "You didn't just leave me. You wanted to destroy me. You're a monster." I let out a bitter laugh. "Ruined your life? You did that yourself. All I did was shine a light on it." She glared at me, then threw the papers at my feet and stormed into the night. I watched her go, feeling the weight on my chest start to lift. The next morning, for the first time in ages, I felt peace. Kayla had signed the papers, Brian was still in jail, and her reputation was in tatters. But something gnawed at me. Maybe it was the quiet or the gut feeling that Kayla wasn't done. It turned out, keeping my guard up saved my life. That afternoon, a police car pulled into my driveway. 2 officers knocked on my door, their faces unreadable. "Ethan Matthews, one asked. Yeah, that's me, I said, feeling my stomach tighten. You're under arrest for aggravated assault, he said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. What? That's insane. Brian attacked me. There's video footage. Save it for the station, the officer said, cutting me off as they led me to the car. Neighbors watched as I was driven away. At the precinct, they showed me a video from Kayla's phone. The angle made it look like I was swinging the hammer at Brian, cutting off what had really happened before that moment. I felt my blood go cold. Kayla had set me up. A few hours later, my lawyer got me out on bail. But the damage was done. My mugshot was all over social media, headlines reading, "Husband's brutal revenge goes too far." I barely made it home before the flood of messages started. Calls, texts, emails, from people who had supported me but now wanted answers. Kayla was playing the victim, and people were falling for it. That night, sitting in the dark, I realized just how deep her betrayal went. She was ready to bury me, to rewrite her story with me as the villain. But I wasn't done fighting. One was a coworker, another was a man from the gym, and the last, surprisingly, was a contractor we hired 2 years back to remodel the bathroom. Each of those affairs came with its own tangled story, and it turned out Kayla wasn't just sneaking around. She was stealing. Every man she got involved with had, without knowing it, bankrolled her lifestyle. She'd take money from me, charm her way into getting gifts from her flings, and even took out loans in their names. There was one note that caught my eye. It was scribbled on a piece of paper, tucked between 2 receipts. The writing was shaky but unmistakably Kayla's. It read, "Brian's temper is a problem. If he finds out about Greg, he'll blow up. Keep him occupied. If things go bad, Ethan is the scapegoat." I stared at that note for what felt like forever. This wasn't just cheating or betrayal. This was planned, cold-hearted destruction. I started to wonder who had sent the folder. None of her flings would have risked exposing her. They had too much to lose. Then it clicked. Amanda, Brian's ex. She must have gone through his emails and dug up whatever dirt she could. As grateful as I felt, I also knew this folder was more than just a revelation. It was a weapon. The next day, I brought everything to my lawyer, Tom. He took one look at the pile and his eyes widened as he went through it. "This changes everything," he said, his voice laced with shock. "How much trouble is she looking at?" I asked, trying to hold back the feeling of grim satisfaction creeping over me. Tom let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "Ethan, if even half of this checks out, she's facing serious jail time for fraud, theft, and possibly identity theft." I nodded, feeling some of the weight of the past few months lift. "Then let's make sure it's all provable." While Tom handled the legal work, I mapped out my next step. Kayla had always obsessed over her image, her perfect reputation, her social standing, her flawless life. The real blow wouldn't just be legal consequences. It would be exposing her carefully hidden lies. First, I reached out to her family. Her father, still angry over the $5,000 she borrowed, was more than willing to listen. I handed him copies of what I found, watching as his face went from shock to outright anger. "I always knew she was selfish," he muttered, shaking his head. "But this is criminal." "It is," I agreed. "And she's going to face the consequences." Her family turned their backs on her completely. Even her mother, who had always defended Kayla, couldn't look past the sheer depth of her deceit. Next, I reached out to the people she deceived, the contractor, the coworker, and the guy from the gym. I sent each of them an anonymous packet filled with evidence. I didn't expect them to confront her, but I knew just knowing the truth would eat at her. Kayla, of course, tried to fight back. She went on a spree of emotional posts on social media, crying about how she was being wronged and how I was obsessed with ruining her life. But by then, no one believed her. The tide had completely turned. People flooded her comments, calling her out for her lies, affairs, and manipulation. Friends she once trusted openly denounced her. Then came the knockout punch. A news outlet picked up the story. It wasn't just town gossip anymore. It was national news. They ran with headlines like "Socialite's Web of Lies Exposed," digging into everything from her cheating to the fraud charges she was facing. Kayla vanished after that. I heard through the grapevine that she moved to a small town in another state, trying to escape the fallout. But the internet doesn't forget, and neither do the people you hurt. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. The legal mess was wrapping up, my name was cleared, and Kayla's reign of chaos was over. But that folder had given me more than just the truth about her. It reminded me of something I'd lost, my own strength. Piece by piece, I began to rebuild my life. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from, picked up hobbies I'd left behind, and even started dating again. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have said my life was over. But now, it felt like I was just getting started. Months went by, and life fell into a steady rhythm. The nightmare Kayla put me through was behind me, and I was taking back control of my life. Mornings were peaceful with a cup of coffee on the patio, and evenings were spent enjoying the quiet I hadn't felt in years. One morning, the phone rang. "Mr. Matthews?" The voice on the other end was clear and professional. "This is Detective Laura Bennett with the Financial Crimes Division. We've been investigating Kayla Monroe's activities and found something interesting. We need to meet." Curiosity gnawed at me, but I hesitated. "Detective, I've already given everything I have. What more do you need from me?" There was a pause before she said, "This isn't just about your case, Mr. Matthews. It's bigger than that. Kayla may be involved in something much more serious." An hour later, I sat in a sterile room across from Detective Bennett. She pushed a stack of papers across the table. Each one was more shocking than the last. Kayla hadn't just been taking from me and her other lovers. She was part of a larger operation. A ring of scammers who targeted partners, drained them dry, and then disappeared. Kayla worked with at least 3 other people, Bennett explained. Her job was to build relationships, gain trust, and get access to financial accounts. Once she got what she needed, she'd move on, leaving them in ruins. My head spun. This was more than just about me. Kayla had built her entire life on lies. "What now?" I asked, leaning back. "We need your help," Bennett said. "Your evidence has been vital, but we need more to bring down the whole operation. Kayla is our key, and you know her better than anyone." I agreed, not out of spite, but to make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else the way she'd hurt me. The plan was simple. Reach out to her. Act like I needed to talk, like I was looking for closure. The detectives would watch, hoping for leads. It took a few days to work up the nerve to call her. When I did, my heart raced. "Ethan?" she answered, sounding unsure. "Why are you calling?" "I need to talk," I said, steadying my voice. "I've been thinking a lot, and I need closure, Kayla. Please." There was a long silence as she thought it over. I could almost hear her mind racing, wondering if this was a trap. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow afternoon." The next day, I walked in, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Kayla was there, sitting in a corner booth, sunglasses on. She looked up, giving me a weak smile. "Ethan," she said. "Kayla," I replied, sitting down across from her. "You look different." She let out a bitter laugh. "Life hasn't been kind." I pretended to be sympathetic. "I've been thinking about how everything fell apart. I just need to know, why? Why did you do it?" Her eyes darted around, checking if anyone was listening. "You wouldn't understand," she whispered. "I had no choice." "No choice." I leaned in. "Kayla, you had everything. Why throw it away?" Her hands trembled as she stirred her drink. "I was in too deep, Ethan. The people I trusted, they weren't who I thought. They used me." "Who?" I pressed, keeping my voice calm.